Alrighty, so today I decided to make a gameplay commentary of Tropico 6. I wanted to make this a beginner's guide, also covering the capitalist topics and going over how to make a capitalist utopia. So on our path to making a capitalist utopia, one of the things that we're going to want to do is to have as many well-off people. Really, we want every single person to be well-off. And then we just want as many rich people and filthy rich people as we can on our island. So in the first era, we're going to try to have nothing but well-off people. Um, Maybe we'll get unlucky and have some poor citizens. Sometimes it's just unavoidable. But I'm going to do everything I can to have nothing but well-off citizens in the first era. And then slowly as we make it through the next couple eras, there'll just be some jobs that we need that only give a wage of less than 10. And I'll get into the wages in the video. So getting started, we're going to start with the sandbox. I have some pretty lofty goals for this island here. I'm going to show you how to move quickly through the eras as fast as possible. And to help with that, you want a low population because the first era is actually largely controlled by the percentage of the population that you can influence. So starting with a lower population allows you to influence a larger percentage, right? The starting money, any money will do. I might do a more difficult run later with starting with the lowest amount at 20,000 just to show it can be done. But for this one, we're going to start with the 200,000 to kickstart our island. The foreign aid I'm going to turn off just to keep up the difficulty. Caribbean happiness, I'm going to keep that strong. The political difficulty, we're going to keep that aggressive, and we're going to keep the opposition difficulty strong as well. I'm going to keep the disasters off just so we can focus on the island and building it up as quick as possible. Pirate difficulty, we're going to keep that off because we're going to be in the colonial era for as short as possible. So the victory goals, I would say the funnest one is trying to get your Swiss bank account to 1 million or to 2 million because it's going to make you think outside the box and try to find creative ways to funnel money into your personal bank account. But for this one, we're just going to try to make it to the modern times. Yeah, in the future, I might make other videos covering like a communist utopia or like a military dictatorship, things of that sort. I have actually a pretty good idea for an island, which is to make like Chicago, like a crime-ridden city with a number of vehicle manufacturing plants. But for now, let's get started with our island. The first major tip is going to be regarding wages. So if we look at the wages here, our dock gives us a wage of 12. If people collectively make more than 10, then they'll be well off. And so if they make less than that, then they're going to be poor. Something really important to know is that if a job gives a wage of 10, but it's like somewhere in the middle, it's not like at the top here, then you need to go one step higher. Right? So these people, many of them would still be poor here, but if we push it above 10, then it'll actually make them well off. By contrast, if you look at the plantation, if we push this to the maximum, which is 10, then these people will still make it to well off because there's nothing higher. Such a little tidbit of information that's important. Another major tip and like a huge flaw that I see in a lot of people's islands is that they don't actually house all of their population. Now this is like really significant because you're paying all these people and you're upkeeping all of the buildings and stuff, but you're not collecting any rents from them. And so it's really important to make sure that you get down and house your entire population. So I've put plenty of forethought into this island, and I've constructed like a lot of different little societies on this island. So I'm going to start it off with this, and then I'm actually going to go through, demolish all of these buildings, all the housing, and then, so getting on to another tip is that if we look at the tavern, the service quality is only 34. If we pump it up to the max and change this to all you can drink, it only gets to 50, which isn't great. And the required wealth is poor. But in the first era, I want everyone to be well off, and then later on, we'll incorporate some more poor people. Having poor people isn't bad, it's just I don't want to have to build up a lot of like poor people infrastructure right off the bat. So I'm going to demolish this and we're going to focus our attention on the theater. Because as you can see here, the visitors must be well off or better. So I'm going to go ahead and purchase this. Something important to know is that certain jobs like the fisherman's wharf, the coconut harvester, another one is the grocery. These jobs all cannot provide a wage of 10, so they will only give poor people, or poor citizens, which isn't, like I said, isn't a bad thing, but I'm just going to avoid it, at least for this first era. So here we are destroying all of these buildings. I'm actually going to relocate the entire population, destroy all the roads here. And we're going to go ahead and start a new construction all the way out here. You can actually sneak by this little part here. Real quick, I'm going to want to figure out where I want my palace. I mean, I'll just put it here and then build around it. In this first era, no one's going to have vehicles, you're not going to have access to buses, so you're going to want to keep everything kind of bunched up and everyone close. Another major tip is that you're going to want to build like city blocks if you're building a capitalist island or a communist island that has the free vehicles edict, because people are going to be driving around a lot and you're not going to want to have them with no road access. Okay, let's see how this is looking. That's looking alright. I'm gonna go with this new idea I had, which is to build city blocks that look like this. Any shape of city block will work, but for this island specifically, I had a pretty unique idea, which is if we look at all the skyscrapers in the game, we have the skyscraper hotel, we have the office, and then we have the modern apartment. All of these buildings are 2x3s. And to quickly show this, here's another 2x3, which is the newspaper. You can see it tiles these city blocks perfectly, and so my unique idea is to build up like a huge city full of nothing but skyscraper buildings and have them like tile the plane perfectly. Okay. This is a pretty good start. I'm going to go ahead and relocate all of the buildings over here. Something that you can do to like really help out your islands is to make a mega plantation, and I'll show you quickly how to do that. So something kind of important is to make sure that you put your sugar plantations in a more central location, and put the corn plantation right next to this one. Okay. So if you build like a whole bunch of plantations in a row, and then you build some on the other side of the road, you can put them on the work mode called multiculture. And in monoculture, it has a higher like base efficiency, but when you put it on multiculture, it lowers it by 40%, as you can see there. 40%. And then for each other nearby plantation that has a different crop, it increases it back by another 10%. And so this stacking this modifier doesn't have a cap, which is really good for us. And so having a bunch of different crop plantations in a row, and then a bunch on the other side of the road, you can actually get your efficiency really high. And another thing is multiculture doesn't decrease the fertility or like the soil degradation over time. And so that's really good for us. So it's like low maintenance with like a high efficiency. So we're going to build up one of each plantation on this entire area. You want 2 sugar plantations in the middle, the most centrally located ones, and the reason is once you make it to the Cold War, you can activate this upgrade, which is fiber fertilization, and it increases nearby plantations by a further 10%. And so you'll see many of these certain upgrades and certain work modes on buildings that will increase another building's efficiency, and it'll have a cap which is double that. And so with the sugar plantations, we'll have two in the center, like centrally located, and it'll give everything the cap of 20%, which will be huge. But that's a ways off, but it's definitely something that you want to plan for. And so the mega plantation isn't going to be super pretty looking, but later on we're going to pave over this whole area, and my lofty goal is to make this area here, this island, like Manhattan, just a huge, huge concrete jungle. This will be like Old Town here. Up here I kind of want like government buildings, then like a rich people suburb here, and then I want to make this area like a theme park, and then the rest of the entire islands is going to be like for all sorts of production and stuff. That's kind of like the beginning inklings of my little island here. I'm going to move the chapel over. You know what, this would probably look pretty good here. So we've gone over the wages. You want to push everything above 10. So 11 here, 12 there. 15, we're going to lower that, keep that above 10 at least. And push this to above 10. Like I said, you can't have it at exactly 10. If it can go higher, you need to go at least one step higher. More hands, why not? We can just have a bunch of people producing stuff. As long as you keep these guys busy with like a lot of construction projects, then I don't advise like ever doing the quick build. It's just not worth the money unless you like really need something down. So quick aside, certain buildings are going to require educated Tropicans, and in the beginning some of the important ones are your chapel. Gonna need lots of educated people for that. A newspaper, which is really important to have at all stages of the game, so we're going to go ahead and plop it down right there. I'll get into why it's important here in a second. And then for our purposes, while we're making this island, we're going to need educated people for our theater here. I'm going to go ahead and plop this one down here. I kind of want to spread out these buildings because once we start getting skyscraper buildings, I don't really want to have to destroy a whole lot. I'll probably end up destroying the chapel and placing something that can have more people in it. So the theater, the newspaper, and the chapel require educated Tropicans. Right at the beginning of the game, I'm going to purchase or hire the Tropicans from off the island. So as we can see, we need 1, 2, 6, 12. So we need 12 educated people. We only have 6, so I'm going to hire people all for this. And as you can see, the theater, even on its like middle setting here, is already giving a higher service quality than our taverns ever could. And if we push it up to the very top, 75, that's huge, but the required wealth is well off, which is more than the taverns. So this is huge, but we're going to want to enable every Tropican to be able to come here. And so we need everyone to be at least well off, and that's not hard to do. So another minor tip is, whenever you kind of set up like a little area and there's some leftover space that you're probably not going to fill in with buildings, just plop in a number of the little parks, because you're probably not going to come back and like change it a whole lot. We're going to want to move on to the next era as quickly as possible, and I'll show you how to move through each era is like the fastest way possible. And so you can actually make it to the World War era exactly 2 years after the start of the game, and it won't always happen. Sometimes you'll just be unlucky, but I'm going to try to make it happen today. Newspapers are huge for spreading propaganda and getting your island to think how you want them to think, and so eventually you're going to want to influence every way they think. And so you can unlock all of these with, there's a certain research. Once you research newspaper, and so you're going to want to get this like right off the bat as soon as you make it to the World War eras, and then you're going to want to construct 2 newspapers for every densely populated area. So like if I had this all built up, which I will soon, then we're going to want a newspaper here, and then like another one maybe like around here. Something that will influence everyone. And so if you see this blue line, that's the area of influence of your newspaper. So in the beginning, you're going to want to construct all of your housing within here. And like I said, you want to house your entire population. And so if you click on the almanac here, and then go over to the people, little people tab, you can kind of get like an idea of everything that's going on. And so as we can see, we have 26 homeless families and 0 vacant homes. You're going to want to try to have 0 homeless families at all times. I'll cover like a lot of the more complicated reasons as to why this might go up. One of the major things is retired people. Once people get old and they retire, then you're going to have to give them like free housing. And I'll show you how to do that later on. But for now, we're going to want to construct residential zones everywhere as much as we can. I mean, there's like a large number of ways that you can do this. I'm just going to try and tile these zones out as much as possible. I like to give everyone like a front yard. And so as we can see, we have 26 homeless families, and each of these country houses can house 2 families. So 26 divided by 2, 13, so we need at least 13 houses. And there's the requisite 13. However, I'm going to make a couple more. And like I said, it's not a good idea to go around quick building whenever you don't need to, but right at the beginning, I'm just going to go ahead and get the 13 that we need quick built. Something important to know is that if we click on the overlays and then we come to the island and look at our beauty, so you can see it's kind of getting higher. Once we start constructing a lot of buildings, it'll go lower. Only a handful of buildings actually require like a high beauty. It never ever influences anything really, like the way that your population thinks. I just like plopping down parks to make the island look better for me. But really quick, just to cover it, the tavern, the higher the beauty in the area, the higher efficiency your taverns are going to be. Another important building is all of the mansions. If you have a lot of mansions, then you're going to need a lot of, or well, it's a good idea to have a high beauty in the area. So another thing is that if a wage reaches over 20, then these people will actually be rich. And so real quickly, I'll talk about the wages a little bit more. Something important to know is that whenever a couple gets married, then it's going to average out their wages. So if you have this guy here making 22, but someone else on like a plantation's making 4, then I'll actually drag this guy down to being poor again, because he'll be making, or well off, even though his wage is over 20. Another thing is that if a couple has children, the more children, the lower their, like if we have 2 people on a plantation that get married, and they're just making it, just scraping by into the well-off with 2 wages of 10, and then they have a child, they'll actually get dragged down a social class, which is kind of a problem. And so we're going to want the child allowances. I'm going to go ahead and start the research on that. It's one of the first things that I like to get when making a capitalist island. I kind of messed up. I didn't do the urban development whenever I built up all these buildings. Just, you definitely want to be doing that. Making a capitalist island, we're going to want the no free lunch, because this increases capitalist standing by 10, which is huge. I'll get more into the standings with different factions later on. But real quick, I can show you prelude to the factions later on. So as you make it through each of the eras, you're going to unlock, well, once you make it to the World War eras, you get 2. So you have this one, this one, this one, this one. And then once you make it to the next era, you unlock 2 more, and then 2 more. Eventually, there's going to be 8 factions. Something important is diehard people of factions. They'll actually never change their political ideology, even if they're influenced by like buildings like the newspaper and stuff. It's pretty important to know. There's ways to like force them to, but yeah, diehard faction members will never change this. But as we can see here, we have our newspaper, and we're going to set it to the independent, which will slowly, if people, so the newspaper influences anyone living nearby. And like I said, it's a good idea to build 2, influencing each like populated area. And the reason is I like to have it set up so that the first 2 like groups of them, the first 4 I guess, will be influenced completely by newspapers. So it'll be boom boom and then boom boom. And then once you unlock the radio station, then I like to set them up to influence the next set. And then finally you have the TV station, which will influence the final set of factions here. Alrighty, so we have our newspapers set up. We're influencing everyone to slowly move them away from the royalist faction towards the revolutionary faction. And we built all of our housing within it. And then on top of that, we're going to have enough workers, educated workers, to staff all of our necessary buildings that require educated people. I just hired 6 more people for this, which means that we're probably going to need some more housing. So I'll go ahead and just plop down some more housing and quick build it all, just so we don't have to worry about it. And then we're going to want to put all of the wages to 10 or higher. And so as long as we're doing that, then everyone will be well off. They'll be able to live within all of these houses, and they'll be able to visit the theater. So as long as you kind of do all of the, like you check off all of these things, then your beginning island should be doing pretty well off. Like I said, it's a good idea to just go around and plop down a bunch of the parks and areas that you're not really going to touch, just to make it look better for yourself. Giving everyone a front yard, making this island look as pretty as possible. So that's looking really good. I'm actually pretty happy with this. And as a final step, I'm going to go ahead and fill in the rest of our plantations here. Bam, so we want one of each type. We already have corn, 2 sugar. Real quickly, I'm just going to kind of gloss over and see where certain plantations can't go. So as we can see here, the cocoa is kind of stuck being here. I seen something else that might have problems growing. No, we should be a-okay with this. We need bananas. Need pineapple, I believe. Corn, tobacco, bananas, 2 sugar, cocoa. Corn, bananas, pineapple, sugar, cocoa, tobacco. Actually, I think I got the tobacco. I already got the tobacco down. We need coffee, cotton, and then we need a rubber plantation. Something important about the capitalist islands is that you're pushing all of the budgets to the maximum. So like by and large, you don't really need to worry about the efficiency, especially with like plantations, because the budget's going to be so high that you're really never going to have to worry about it. By contrast, if you make a communist island, then you're going to have to focus a lot more attention, because a major thing with communism is that you're trying to have the wages all set to the lowest. And so I'll make a video covering communist island later on. That'll be a fun one to make. I've set up a couple of communist islands that worked out really well. Alrighty, so we have everyone set up, got all of our beginning islands, or our beginning buildings set up. Something important, like a pretty important little tip, is that, as we can see here, we have more unemployed people than vacant jobs. So I'm going to just quick build buildings until we have at least enough to get everyone going. I'm going to push this up. The chapel is one of the only ways to get some early healthcare. Kind of important to know. And after we quick built up all of that, we have at least enough vacant jobs for everyone, but I'm going to get one more just in case we get a bunch of new people here. I'm going to want to, on PC you can change the wages of everything with control and then left clicking. So as we can see, this is not at the highest, same with this one. And even if I'm on this one, I hit control click, it'll push all the plantations up. So that's a quick way to just cover everything. Same thing with changing the work modes. So you can see we control click that one, but this one also changed to multicultural. So we're going to need even more housing. So I'm going to go ahead and add this little tile that I like doing on these city blocks. Okay, that's looking pretty good. Go ahead and just quick build like 2 of these. And once the construction crew, yeah, already we're getting a lot of people working there. So they should construct everything else. Oh yeah, my little tip that I was going to mention earlier is that if you kind of have like a lot of buildings built, they will start requiring money, even though they're not like producing anything, if you don't have the workforce for them yet, or the people to live in them yet. And so something you can do is to just pause these buildings until you have the required number of people, like the required workforce or the required homeless population. So looking at the overlays, we can see this is something I always come and check, the residential occupancy. We can see which houses are like lived in and which ones aren't. So technically I could go through to all these pink buildings and then just pause them all, and then as people require the housing, then I can unpause them. Same thing with the workforce occupancy. If the construction crew was moving really quickly and they built up all of these, but I didn't have the workforce yet, then what I could do is just pause them and then unpause them once I have the population. But I'm just going to leave everything for now because the numbers are looking pretty good. So that's fully staffed. They should be staffed pretty soon. Same thing with this. So our island's looking pretty good right off the bat. And hopefully soon we're going to start getting demands right on cue. Something about the crown demands, when you're trying to move through as quick as possible, you don't really want to be doing the crown demands, as this will tick off the revolutionaries. We'll accept it and then we'll just never do it, unless we run out of time, which, like I said, only happens if you get unlucky. So once we get the revolutionary demands, we're going to quick build. We're just going to get them done as quickly as possible in the hopes that we build up a sizable revolutionary population as quick as possible. So you can click on buildings, check out their statistics. As we can see, they haven't influenced anyone yet, but this number will start to go up. Yeah, already we got one. So this number should climb up over time. Oh, cool. This is the best demand for trying to get through the first era. If you're trying to do it as quick as possible, this is the best demand to be getting. So she wants us to build a tavern. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down here, get the tavern, quick build it, and then bam, we get 10 revolutionary immigrants, which is huge. You always want to choose the revolutionary immigrants, you don't want the money or anything else, and the reason is we're trying to have a population that's 60% or higher revolutionaries. And so as you can imagine, having 45 instead of 35 as compared to the 30 royalist would be huge. That's like a huge step up. And that's why having a low population counter, or a low population count in the beginning, is important. And so as soon as we're done with that, we're not going to have any poor people on this island, so we're just going to go ahead and demolish the building. And the reason you want to demolish it is maybe she'll come back and ask for it again. And so then we would get 20, and if she asked for it again, we'd have 30. Population count. Each of these gives workplace for 8. So we're barely scraping by. I'm going to leave this one, put on multicultural. And this one's down to a lowly 68, but once all of these are built up, it'll push it at least to above 100, even though they're missing a number of, like a huge number of tiles. But that's okay. Kind of a little misconception that I see a lot of people do is they'll go through and they'll put all of their buildings on high priority. And the reason you don't want to do that is just leave everything on normal priority. And if you want something done quicker, like first, like I could do high priority here, and that was kind of just a bit lucky. But I could do high priority here, and it'll make all of the people come and work on this building before the rest of them. And then if there's like a building that you're not really worried about, you could put on low priority. And so say I wanted all these houses done, I could put all these houses on high priority, and this whole neighborhood will spring up before they do anything else. But that's not really what I'm worried about right now. How are we doing? Yeah, see, we have a lot of vacant jobs. Just gonna go through and pause a bunch of these buildings. The reason you want to pause these buildings is if you leave them all going, it's just gonna be a huge hole in your pocket, just draining money. So you want to pause anything you're not using at this moment. So as soon as we get the population, I'll unpause the necessary buildings. Once our unemployed hits 0, then the homeless population should follow afterwards. If this next demand isn't for either a library or a pirate cove, then I'm just going to build them both. You're going to need the research And you're also going to need the raid points for the next era, so I'm just going to go ahead and get them out of the way after this next revolutionary demand. In regards to when you should build more Teamsters offices, how I usually do it is if I see more than one building, like 2 or 3 buildings, that have 1,000 stuff in the storage or higher, that's when I build another one. But as you can see right now, like 300, 300. These numbers are a bit low to warrant another whole Teamsters office, so I'll just let this one stand for a bit longer. We just got 15 new people, so you can see there. 8 unemployed people, so if I unpause, we'll do this one here. If I hit play on this one, 8 and 8, that should be perfect. And on top of this, we have the extra housing to not really have to worry about it either. Let's scope out our wealth so we can see our hard work and good planning is starting to pay off. We have a lot of well-off people. And we're trying to get this poor and the broke population down to 0. So that should follow pretty soon, especially once we unlock the child allowances. 11 months left until we hit the first possible chance of making it to the next era. So if we get one more demand and another boat shows up with the revolutionaries, we might be able to hit that. As soon as we make it to the next era, I believe I'll be able to build the apartments, which I'm going to start replacing all of these little country house blocks with actual apartments. Produce fish, this one's pretty unlucky. Honestly, yeah, I don't know how to feel about that one. I'm just gonna discard of it. It really sucks. That's just unlucky. If you get like multiple taverns back to back, then you can easily make it to the next era by 1902. Because the game in the first era starts in the year 1900, right? But we're just kind of unlucky on this one. It's kind of whatever. If you had a fisherman morph, then I would say keep it. Keep that one, and you'd be able to get more revolutionaries pretty quickly. But I don't, and that's fine. Hopefully this newspaper will be able to influence. Yeah, we're getting kind of a lot of propaganda successes. 31, 47, I'm not sure if that's 60% or higher. It might be. Child allowances is done, so real quick I'll show you this in action. So our wealth is 16, poor people. Let's activate this. 10, so we lose 6. Change this to multicultural. So now we can see we're starting to get like 150s and stuff. And then once we get the sugar plantations with the fiber fertilization, it'll push all of these up to like close to 200. Should be huge. Yeah, we just need a handful of people working. Why is this guy poor? His wife isn't working. But this one. Her husband isn't working. Yeah, it's just people not quite there yet. But once everyone's got a job, then everyone will be at least well off. We won't have any more poor people. And we'll only have well off people, so everyone will be able to visit our theater here. This is a DLC thing. I won't build too many. Actually, I won't build any DLC buildings for this first playthrough. Just keep it kind of simple. Try and keep it as vanilla as possible. I can't really stop. I mean, I guess I could go through and disable the DLC, but I won't let it affect too much of the gameplay. Pretty soon I'm going to want to build some mines, as we can see. It would actually be kind of huge to build a coal plantation there, or a coal mine there. Could also build them up here. Having the coal plantation early means that it'll be like steadily producing once we get enough for the first power plant. Once you unlock the power plant, that'll give you access to, for one, giving electricity to all of your housing, which increases the housing happiness even further, which would be huge, but it also unlocks the radio station, which requires electricity. And so then we can influence even more people's thoughts with more propaganda. But that's a little ways off, so we'll just cruise along the altitude we're at right now. A little side goal is to try to stay above 100,000 like dollars at all times. One of the major reasons is that the bank actually hits its cap once you have 100,000. The bank gives you money based on how much money you have in your treasury. So staying at 100,000 has practical uses besides just being a good buffer from not going bankrupt. Ooh, 24. Hopefully. Ooh, it's gonna be awful close. Actually, no, that's not enough revolutionaries. 4 months. Have a pirate cove. Huge. Okay. I forgot to build a pirate cove. The boat won't show up within this, like, 3 months, because month's almost over, but once it does show up, we'll get this extra 10, and we'll probably be, like, right there. Quick build. I'm gonna go ahead and build the library. Quick build. Alrighty. 24 for something that doesn't really do a whole lot. Just gives off some free research. 24, that's a bit expensive. But this, I'm going to push this to over 10. Like I said, you always want to over 10. You always want wages over 10 so that people can work at these places and still be able to use all the facilities. We have plenty of educated people now, so that should quickly fill up. We have a lot of people just walking around. We're going to want buses soon. Alrighty, oops. I let some time pass on accident. Not the biggest deal. Things seem to have been going pretty well. Hopefully right here we can get the pop. That'd be huge. Once we get this 10, hopefully that pushes us over the limit. Ooh, not quite. We're either gonna have to wait for one more demand, or we're gonna have to get lucky and get a lot of propaganda successes. So I believe how the newspaper works specifically is that workers need to be inside it. I'm not sure if that's true, but every time someone visits their home, then they'll be influenced, potentially, by the newspaper. Makes sense. So you want 2 for every, like, populated area. And then you're gonna want a radio station, influencing as many, like, workplaces as possible. I like to get, like, total coverage with all of the media buildings. At least, like, almost total coverage. Produce fish. Oh, man, I hate this. Okay, it's alright. I'm just gonna go ahead, just to speed up the process as much as possible, I'm just gonna build Fisherman's Wharf. We'll quick build it. So, like I said, even on max budget, the wage is only 7, so these people will never be more than poor. So they're gonna need housing, they're gonna need a tavern, but I'm not gonna build those. We'll just kind of abuse this to get by as quick as possible. All we need is one more little chunk. You know what, we're almost to the next era. I might as well start getting, like, some poor people in here. We can build a grocery. Yeah, I'll build a grocery right here. Build a tavern, somewhat centrally located. Maybe we'll just build it out here. So something that you want to do whenever you're making the capitalist island, just to, like, min-max things, is you're going to want to leave all your plantations and stuff on allow local consumption, and then you're not going to want to build a grocery. Because like I said, even on max budget, this one doesn't quite give us enough wage, so this person will always be poor unless they marry someone rather wealthy. And so that's not always going to happen, so it's better to just leave everything on allow local consumption and then not build the grocery. But we just built it. It's okay, so I'm going to take all of these off, allow local consumption. And the reason is that if you allow local consumption, then the food quality is kind of like, let's see if it changes now, yeah. Food quality is capped at like 42 or whatever. But allowing local consumption will funnel all your food items into the grocery where people can purchase them. It looks like we are starting to get a lot of plantations that have a lot of stuff in storage. And it's like actually way too much, so I'm gonna go ahead and build a couple more Teamsters offices. We'll start with 1. The newspaper's doing pretty good work. Let's push this up another 2%. If that can happen pretty soon, then we'll be moving on to the next era, which will be cool. Like I said, if you kind of cheese the revolutionary demands, then you can actually get there right at 1902, like January 1st. I've done it a handful of times. It would have been cool to get it for this video, but like I said, sometimes you just get unlucky. I'd say more often than not, you get unlucky. Something you need to watch out for is sometimes, like whenever I was younger, I would always have this going on, having a bunch of buildings with like a high stuff and storage, and then I'd build like an extra Teamster's office or two, and all of it would get shoved out to the dock, and then I would think like, oh man, I'm making like 15,000 every time it shows up, but I'd only seen the first like export, and then it would give me like this false sense of like financial security. And so that's something important that you need to watch out for, is that your production probably isn't as high, especially if you just built more Teamsters offices. So once all this gets funneled out, we'll probably make like 15, 20k, but then it'll go back to its normal amounts, which is still pretty high because this is a rather large plantation here, producing a lot of stuff. We're gonna need more housing soon, but honestly I'm just gonna avoid it until I can get to the next era and make better buildings. Hopefully we can get a lot of fish rather quickly, or the newspaper really kicks in. Seems like it's slowly doing its work. But this is actually pretty cool to see, because over the course of this newspaper's lifetime, which I built nearly in the first year, it's influenced like 100 people. And one influence means that like a royalist goes from strong to moderate, then moderate to indifferent, and then they slowly climb up this chain here. And as you can see, we have 69 revolutionaries, but 33 royalists, so that's pretty cool to see. If you're really struggling for money, you can put on the penny saver. This doesn't decrease liberty quite as much. All of these are going to decrease liberty, but I think it's going to be outweighed by the amount of liberty that the building itself gives off. So, oh man, that's rough. If we got like 500 fish all of a sudden, right before that showed up. Yeah, see, we're getting this population, like a bunch of people showing up, and it actually decreased our percentage by 1%. Disaster striking. Hopefully this gets done sooner rather than later. Maybe we'll get like one more demand, like another tavern, pretty quickly after that. That'd be pretty cool. So that's pretty good to see, is that all of our buildings are actually within the sphere of influence of our newspaper. Every single housing. So everyone has a chance of being influenced every time they visit their house. The entire population of our island is under the influence of our newspaper, which is pretty good. You always want that. You always want your entire population being influenced. And that way you can steer your entire population towards like your ultimate goals. Later on I'll get into my goals for this island. We're going to try to make like a capitalist utopia, like a liberal haven. Something pretty cool is that if you influence like your entire population into being intellectuals, the theater actually has the improv theater, which if you read it real quick, each citizen oriented towards the intellectual faction visiting the theater has a chance, efficiency divided by 2. So let's say our efficiency is 125 divided by 2 equals like 62, I think. So there's a 62% chance that anyone visiting it will increase the intellectual faction's standing by 1. And so if everyone's an intellectual and they occasionally visit... Oh, cool, we got it. Okay. Oh, no, we got this. Still pretty good. Maybe we'll get lucky and this chunk will push us over the limit. That'd be huge. But back to what I was saying, all the intellectuals, if it's nothing but intellectuals and they visit the improv theater, then slowly over time this will push the, as you can see the standings here, it'll push your intellectual standing all the way to 100 without much effort. Just having an improv theater or two. Show you all sorts of like tips and tricks throughout the course of this video on how to maximize efficiency, keep a high population. We're going to go and pause these, so hopefully whenever these people show up, they instantly fill in these jobs. That would be pretty handy. Cool. So we can declare independence because we just got that chunk of people. Coming into the World War era, 1903, not bad. Alrighty, so I think I'm going to end this first episode here. I've been editing it for a while now, and I think making it through the first era is like a pretty good checkpoint for an episode at least. I got like an hour and 15 minutes of footage and cut it down to about 45 minutes. For this first series, it's probably going to be a bit longer episodes, and I'm thinking like 3 or 4 for like the Capitalism beginner guide. And for later series, I might end up doing longer or actually shorter episodes and probably less episodes. And I'll really cut those down to make them as watchable as possible. But for this first series, I definitely wanted to cover as many tips as I could. And so as I was rewatching it, there's just so many good little tips that I had. I just had to leave them in. If there's any tips that you guys have actually that I may have missed, I know there's not a lot of information out there on the internet about this game. So if you have any tips, be sure to leave a comment down below. If you like this type of content, then be sure to subscribe. I'm going to start uploading a lot more videos soon. And if you enjoyed this video, then leave a like. Peace.